further ado, talk a little bit here about really what is the powerful tool of paraphrasing, and really what it is. We all kind of know about paraphrasing. We probably teach our students about paraphrasing in the ELA classroom. But what we're talking about is paraphrasing in conversation. And it really is a powerful tool. And some of us are coming here with different levels of knowledge, I'm sure. Some of us are coming with the information of the old standard. What I hear you saying is, we want to kind of dispel that one now. So let's kind of move that out of our vernacular right now, because we're going to talk about different ways of doing that in just a minute. But really what paraphrasing does in a conversation is it sends the message that as a listener, I care. Because if I'm paraphrasing you, I have to step back and listen to what you're saying and then reword what you're saying. And so these are skills that we should be using all the time in informal and formal situations, but oftentimes just informally is where we're interacting with people, because people really need to know, particularly in this day and time, that someone is really listening to us. And so what I have here is it really is the difference between listening to respond and listening to understand. When we paraphrase someone, we are really listening to understand. And our brains are wired really to listen to respond, but what we really need to do is slow down and think about what someone's saying so that we can listen to understand. And there's a whole lot more to this, but that's just kind of the gist there. Next slide, please. So just to kind of frame this a little bit around kind of human psychology. So humans, we do get stuck in our thinking. And so 3 of the most popular things that I like to talk about here are these types of thinking. One, where we get into this all or nothing thinking, where we say, well, no one in this class is prepared. Well, we know that if someone says that, we can dwell in that and think, well, no one is prepared. And we know for a fact, if I were to paraphrase you or even ask a simple question, so no one in the class is prepared, we know that's truly not true. There's got to be people in there who are prepared. So we want to kind of paraphrasing and inquiry helps pull us out of that all or nothing thinking, or can. So lots of times we think out of our locus of control. Well, I've heard this a lot and I get it. They've not been to formal school since 5th grade. Well, that's probably true, or they haven't been, they haven't been to formal school since 7th grade or whatever it may be. But really, when we think about paraphrasing and inquire around that, can we really control that aspect? How can we move people forward? So another thing that paraphrasing can do is help move us out of things that are out of our control back into things that are in our control. So that's another thing. And then another psychological element that I see sometimes happening is dwelling in this current stuckness or the stuck state that happens a lot. And it's, my students will never get these concepts. We kind of get stuck a little bit. And if we can paraphrase and start thinking about how we can move people forward by hearing what they're saying, then maybe we can unstick them and move them forward. And I'm simplifying this a lot. There are some other things that I hope you'll take advantage of down the line as you're growing in your leadership, but those are just kind of the way I wanted to frame kind of the importance of paraphrasing. So the next slide. So really we talk about 3, this is the nitty gritty. We talk about 3 kinds of paraphrasing when we think about how we paraphrase each other. So I want to go through these really quickly. One is acknowledging paraphrasing, and that's one of the simplest type of paraphrases. If you're talking with me, I'm just really mirroring back to you what you're saying. And this is where the old-fashioned what I hear you saying used to come up. Which, that's not wrong per se, but what we say with paraphrasing is we really want to kind of leave the I out of it and put it back on the you. So if I am paraphrasing as a mirror or an acknowledger, so what I might be saying is, so you're thinking that, or you're wondering if, you're frustrated because, rather than what I hear you saying is you're frustrated. So there's kind of a difference there. So that's just kind of hearing what someone's saying and just kind of paraphrasing it back to them. Another very powerful form of paraphrase is organizing. And Lord, in the environments in which we're in now, there are probably a million thoughts coming in our minds at once. And sometimes what a person needs to hear is how to organize thinking. So I might come to you and say, I've got to get these assignments ready for third block, or I've got to, respond to this parent. I've got to do blah, blah, and you give a whole list of things. Well, you can't deal with all that at once. So as an organized paraphraser, I might say, so there are really three broad issues that you're dealing with here. One is this, one is that, and the other is that. And normally what I would do then is follow up with a question. So which one of those are most impactful, important for you to think about right now? That organizes thinking and gives someone a chance to look beyond that and really think about it rather than think about all three or four or five or 1 million of those things together. I use that paraphrase a lot with people. And then the last paraphrase that we talk about is abstracting paraphrasing. And what that really is all about is not only mirroring what someone says, but really attaching a value statement to it. So, for example, and I'm going to show you some examples in a moment. So, you might say something along the line, so it's important to you that. It's important to you that students are on grade level. Well, yeah. Or it's important to you that students are highly engaged in whatever. When we hear those kinds of things back to us in our mind, it triggers our brain that someone is listening to us, what we value, what we find important, what a goal is, and all of that. So those are the three types of broad paraphrases, just to kind of pull yourself around. So if you go to the next slide for a second. So we're not going to have time to just delve into this, but I want to make sure you have this as a resource. But if you do want to click on that link that is all capital letters, I'm sorry I did that. I don't usually put all caps in something. But if you would just take a millisecond and click that on and look at the little and just skim over the section that's under paraphrasing. I just want to give you a little bit of just a little bit of background with kind of paraphrasing to sum up what I said. So I'm going to give you about a minute or so just to really skim that little short paragraph piece under paraphrasing, and the other you can look at as a reference later on.
I have to go over that with them.
And I know I probably didn't give you near enough time to look at that, but that just kind of brings home some of the points that I was making there, and just to kind of bring it back from some research that we worked through with paraphrasing. And really, it is a skill that we need to work on and hone. And we're not going to leave here today necessarily with all the tools of being a great paraphraser, but hopefully this gives you a chance to start dipping your toes in the water a little bit. One thing I want to point out here that is really important is, again, that last part is delivered by using you language rather than I language. And so that's one thing I want you to kind of be conscious of today as we look at some examples and then get a chance to sort of practice this a little bit. So Jennifer, what I have on the next one are just examples of each one of the paraphrases we talked about. And I think they probably start automatically. Someone shut up. All right. So this first one, will you stop it for me there, Jennifer, real quick? This first one is really an acknowledgement paraphrase. And so this is me. I hate seeing myself on camera. I'll go ahead and say it, but it was the best way I could do it. So this is me in a coaching situation with a teacher, and she is talking about getting her kids ready for the EOC. So this is me acknowledging, paraphrasing her. Oops. So
I have to go over that with them. Get good sleep, eat good breakfast, those types of things. But I also want to make sure that in sharing, especially the environmental things, that I'm not stressing them out. Or when we're going over, these big review games, if they're like, I can't, I don't even remember any of this, and I'm stressed, or, I don't want to also have it be a kind of a negative thing where they start to feel overwhelmed at the amount of content, and I'm just kind of trying to figure out the right balance of, we want to spend as much time as we can going over content, but I also want to almost give them maybe some time to just decompress a little. I don't know. It's a hard.
So you're really trying to strike that balance between, letting them be kids, so that's what they are, and also taking the test seriously.
Right.
So that is an example of acknowledging. And notice who did most of the talking? The person who was the quote, in this case, the coachee. So I was listening, and then I just brought it back to her in that simple paraphrase. So the next one is a organizing paraphrase.
You're planning
You're good, Jennifer.
to switch over to teaching second grade next year. So as you're planning that, what are some of the goals you want to think about as you're getting your mind wrapped around going to a new grade level?
Okay, well, I think first of all, I'm just thinking about how the curriculum is different. And so one of the goals I'll have this summer is looking at the standards. And it's been a while since I taught second grade. I've been in first for 5 years. So I know some things have kind of changed with, more of the development with Common Core. So I need to, first of all, make sure that I know what I need to teach. And when I taught it before, I was in another county. So I need to familiarize myself with what Wake County's expectations are and the different programs for second grade. So that's in the forefront. And then there are other goals I have about, just kind of fitting in with the second grade team. How will I, what will my place be in that team? And, what do I want to contribute, and how can I be helpful, and just, getting into the groove for that team. So I want to think about some of those things. And then also, I know I'll have some of my same students. So I've never had that before unless they were retention. And so that will be a little bit different too, how to proceed with students that I've had the year before, which is great if, it was a great experience and, not many challenges along the way, but then how to proceed when, it was a very challenging student, or, there were some pitfalls along the way. And so how do we want to, move on for the next year and still start anew, even though they've had me for a year.
Right. So really there are three things you're looking at that are kind of big nuggets for you. One is thinking about the curriculum, which sounded like it was kind of forefront.
Right.
The other one is thinking about your place with the team and how you might work and interact interdependently with those people. And the third one is all about your student interactions with kids you may have already had for a good amount of time, both good and bad potential.
So that was a good example of organizing. And we moved on to really kind of think about which one of those she wanted to focus on, because she couldn't do all three. And then the last one is a little quicker than this one, and that's our abstract.
As you think about that, what strategies might you put into place that could help you realize that nirvana, if you will?
Well, a couple of things. I think a schedule for me to strive to keep.
Okay.
Maybe work with everyone, table one on Monday, everyone at table two on Tuesday, and try to minimize the interruption, which goes back to classroom management. I mean, it's just like all the other times of the day. You try to teach the kids to be independent and problem solve on their own, or ask the person on either side or across the table from them, but then sticking to that and not allowing myself to be distracted by something that's going on across the room, type of thing. Finishing up that 3-minute conference before I tell 2 kids over here that they need to get back to work.
Okay, so really, so to you, student engagement is important.
Yes.
It's something valuable, a lot.
Yes, definitely.
So thinking about.
So that's it. So you saw her, and all the times I paraphrased her, any of these people, you saw the positive reaction of hearing that paraphrase. And again, we're not going to leave here as experts on paraphrasing, but I wanted to kind of give you those examples as a way to see what it looks like in reality. So we're going to take a minute, and Jennifer, I don't know how you guys are breaking this up, so I'll let you do your magic on your end there. But I did want to give you a little bit of time, because I've done a lot of talking, to kind of have an opportunity to just practice this a little bit. And so you might want to have handy with you either the handout or the slide that shows the 3 different kinds of paraphrases. So we're going to try to partner, And really, when you get in there, it's just really informal. I put a prompt up here. What is something that's important for you to be aware of as a leader? And so how this really works is if you have a partner, there may be trios. One person would talk, and then you take a stab at trying to paraphrase them without using the word I in any one of the three kinds of paraphrases that are out there. So Jennifer, are you going to put people together somehow and work your magic? Okay. All right, and thank you for doing that really brief, real quick rundown. But I did want to spend a little bit of time for a couple of things here. One is just maybe hopefully to hear from a couple of people about how the paraphrasing went and what were kind of some differences with your, or some experiences with your paraphrasing, and if there were one or two questions or anything, just to kind of bring this to a close. So just first of all, start, see if anybody had anything they wanted to add about, what was it like paraphrasing or being paraphrased, or your experience with that?
Well, it was some of the most active listening that I've done recently, especially to adults. So it felt different, trying to, then I took some notes, listening to understand. So that part felt very different instead of listening to respond. So it took me out of what I'm hearing is to kind of trying to really listen, understand, and then articulate it back.
Right. And these strategies work very well with students too, trust me. And they want to be heard as well. So thank you for that. Somebody else might want to add something. I appreciate that.
I need to do this more.
Yeah.
Like with everything. Not just at school, but with everything. Like with my husband, with my friends, with my daughter. I think we need to get into the habit of, and if we were to get into the habit of doing this starting in elementary school, and imagine if we had an entire crew of children that we took all the way from kindergarten all the way up, and this was part of their curriculum, something that had to happen. It would be interesting to see where we'd go.
Yeah, because we do listen to respond. That is our default function. And we're trying to, in fact, literally, the research has shown that our brain is wired to think about what we're going to say next when someone else is talking. So we stop, put that aside, and really start thinking about how we're going to really listen with empathy. Like Adrian said there, it's a great social emotional skill. All right, I just want to make sure that someone else doesn't have something to add before I wrap up here, because I know we're short a little bit on time, but I appreciate those comments.
Jeremy, real quick, I'm sorry. I know you said you're short on time.
No.
The lady that I was with made a really good point, because we are a lot of I and want to, one up or want to give an example, or and the point that she made was a really good point. Is that going to benefit, really truly benefit the person that you're talking with? And so you need to stop and think, are you telling it to make yourself feel better or to give yourself act or whatever? Is it really benefiting that person that you're in? If it's not, don't say it. You don't have to say it. Yeah.
And when you stop and paraphrase authentically, you really are supporting the thinking of that other person so much more so than, because a lot of times we do want to relay our experiences. That's important, but it's really not helping others sometimes. So thank you for that. So Jennifer, if we want to go to the next slide really quickly. So I just wanted to make sure that I shared this with you, that there are some opportunities to extend this learning a little bit. And I know we're kind of strapped for being able to do all of this great stuff right now. But I will tell you that there is a course that we teach called Cultivating Greatness through Listening and Inquiry. And this is a face-to-face course. So it's probably going to be hard for us to do now. There is one in December. This is offered through the Office of Professional Learning that I've had the pleasure of being able to work with. But I do know that there are works to have this repeated throughout, even during the summer months. So just something to keep in mind. And that's for those of you who've taken cognitive coaching, because I know there's a couple of you on here. It's based on that, but it's a real truncated version of that. It's just really about listening, questioning, pausing, and paraphrasing. So it's really good skills for school-based people to have. So keep that in mind. But if you really wanted to kind of dip your toes into something, I've made this Canvas. It's not in Wake Learns yet, but really what I think it works best for right now is just resources. But if you want to go to there are different resources that you can kind of work through on your own. And if you really want to work through them, I would be glad to award credit for it. So if that's something you want to do on your own, you can just let me know, and I would be glad to make it a Wake Learns course. I just haven't done it yet. But there's some, some ways to go through and just kind of dig a little deeper in this when if you'd like. And then last but not least, there is an article for some of us who like to read research and stuff by Bob Garmston, who is the founder of cognitive coaching, which a lot of this is grounded in. It's a really good article on collaborative culture, kind of what you were talking about, Stephanie, making it sort of a collaborative effort from not just, for everybody. That might help you a little bit in framing some of this work as well. So anyway, there are some ways that you can plug into more learning there, and know that we will be working on other ways to do that as well, but that might immediately help you there. So I just want to share those with you all. All right. I don't think I have anything else, Jennifer.